Well, that was appropriate. That's Dean. Did you select that song before we did the Lord's Supper? Well, as it happens, I'm going to be talking about wealth, and not to get you guys give more. That's not it at all. But just the idea of wealth, though. That's what we want to. I want to talk a little bit about that. The conditions of the slaves in the Roman Empire, which a lot of them, a lot of the Church of Christ people were the Church of Christ. A lot of the early church people were slaves. They barely get there. They dressed in rags, didn't have anything. Like you remember when Christ was crucified, the soldiers even gambled over the cloths that he wore. The coat, and the rest of it. What? We wouldn't do that. We don't need any, I wouldn't take anything off a dead body. I just knew, but they did, because everything was valuable. Everything was hard to come by. All of it. Cloth was valuable back then. I can imagine a slave, what he would give for a good pair of work boots. Oh, he's running around barefoot, summer, winter. Wouldn't, maybe if he's lucky he had a pair of sandals. I don't know, but he didn't have more than one pair if he did. He couldn't drink the water. It was too dangerous to drink. The groundwater is very dangerous to drink. We know about that, because of Ethiopia. When they go through a drought, that's one of the things that really kill people off, is that people end up drinking groundwater with all the parasites. Just think about Paul. See, he's in Rome, and he writes a letter to Timothy, and he says, and Timothy's over at Troas, and so Troas over in Turkey. So Paul writes this letter, and he said, Timothy, I want you, when you come, and it's going to be quite a few weeks before he gets there, because the letter's got to go, and then Timothy's got to come back, and they don't have postal service like we have. It's just a boat's got to get there, and then a boat's got to bring Timothy back. And he says, I want you to bring me a couple of things. I want you to bring me some books, and there's some parchments. I really want the parchments. And by the way, could you bring me my coat? I'd like to have a coat. What? This is in 2 Timothy 4:13. See that, what did Paul do for the intervening months that he didn't have a coat? He shivered, I guess. We would, what do you mean? Have to wait for a coat? He needs his coat now. Not in weeks. It's cold now. It's the average lifespan is less than 40 back then. You were lucky if you made it. You were, half of the people died before they were 40. So anyway, they're mostly poor people in church, and that's in first. Paul talks about that in 1 Corinthians 1:26. Anyway, they were slaves. Remember Philemon? He had a slave, and Paul was telling him, you ought to, just turn this guy loose. He's a Christian now. So anyway, and so you can see from their point of view this attraction of the holy city, New Jerusalem. Oh man, a walled city where you're safe, and streets of gold and precious stones and clean water coming right out of the throne, and all the food you could want, because there's a tree of life going down the middle of it. Boy. And so you can see that a slave to a slave, man, that would be wonderful. That would be absolutely terrific. But what happens if you bring Paul up, into modern day USA? Suddenly he appears, right here with us, and he wants a coat. You want a coat? Yeah, okay. How about 10? How many coats do you want? What kind do you want? You want a summer coat, a winter coat? Whatever you want, Paul. You can have that. We'll get them for you right now. Shoes. Okay. In fact, we could take him down to the local thrift store. To Paul, a thrift store would be an emporium of unimaginable wealth, and we can fix him up with dress shoes, tennis shoes, sandals, flip-flops, what have you. It didn't matter. Socks, underwear, pants, whatever you want, for a few bucks. We can, you see, for Paul, it would be astonishing, just the wealth that's here. See, and so, but if you contrast this with the, with the holy city, Yeah, the holy city has streets of gold, but do they have 12-lane highways, complete with, with clover leaves? In Holy City, do you think in Holy City you have to walk everywhere? You think there's any Lexuses up in Holy City? Hey, I don't know. What about Harley Davidsons? Can I get a Harley Davidson? That'd be so cool. I don't know. Can you fly in heaven? Marcia's in Africa today. The other day, a day or so ago, Friday. When did you guys leave? Friday night. Friday night, she was here. Today she's in Africa. Been there for a few hours. Halfway around the world. I think the trip was 18 hours or so. I think in the air, something like that. See, and even our poor people in this nation, we have access to goods and services unimaginable even to Caesar, let alone the poor Christians. So remember those. The thing was, remember when we had the homeless over the first time, and they're trooping in, and I was looking for really poor and beat down people and all that, and it took me a few minutes, and then I started looking around and I realized all these guys have smartphones. They're messing with their phones, and they're looking around for plugs to plug their phones in. You guys are homeless. What are you doing with phones? And I don't have a smartphone. Alice does now, but back then, I can't even work hers. What are these guys all, with phones? Where'd you get phones? And then, well, the government gives them phones because that way they can stay in touch, I guess, with their welfare worker. I don't know, but they have, but they come in with government supplied iPhones, or smartphones anyway. And so they're looking around, and in the kitchen, see, they don't drink groundwater. We have bottled water. They all load up on bottled water. That's what they do. Go ahead and fill their pockets so they can have. That's what they drink, bottled water. And what about you hear about this epidemic of hunger? Now, really, that's not really realistic. If every once in a while, some parents, you'll find some parents really mistreating their kids, putting them in the closet, locking them up, starving and all that. When that happens, that makes headlines. That's in the paper. The kids didn't have enough to eat. They were hungry, and the parents didn't give them any food. It's a headline. That's not the common thing. That's rare in the United States. And it's not for lack of assets, not lack of what happens. It's drugs. That's what causes that. Not lack of resources. See, so even our homeless, that we consider homeless, our poor homeless, are dripping with wealth compared to an average Christian, the average Christian of the first century. Yeah, you guys don't have no idea how well off you have it. You are how well off you have it right now. See. So New Jerusalem, it's a tall city. It's 1,200 miles high, if I remember right. But we got skyscrapers here. Anybody want to look at Trump Tower? You can. It's got a webcam there. You can take a peek anytime you want. You can look in the lobby. See, if a first century Christian, if he were suddenly transported to the USA, you think would he have thought he'd gone to heaven? Whoa. Streets aren't gold, they're black, but man, look at those horseless carriages. Wow. You know what I mean? Like that. I remember people used to defect from Russia a long time ago. And I remember an interview I'd read, I don't know, back in the 70s, and that they had asked this Russian guy, what is the thing that is the thing that's most hard for you to get used to when you come to America? And he said, well, it's the choices. There's 10 kinds of toilet papers, 20 kinds of toothpaste. You have, and I was thinking about it. I was reading, having read that, all he says it's bewildering, because back in Russia, of course, you didn't have a meat market. You had a sausage market. You went in there and that's all you got, sausage, if you were lucky. Sugar rationed, everything was rationed back then. It was hard to come up with anything, vodka, but that was hard to come by. It was Russian vodka though. So anyway, And so I remember, looking at the shelves in Safeway, and every once in a while, this little lady will come along. This happens to guys. There's somebody who's only this tall, and says, can you reach me down? Something on the very top shelf, and so it's 4 feet over her head and 3 feet over mine. And I can barely get it. Oh, yeah, I got it. My pleasure, man. That's this guy. That was what was hard. That was hard for him. This guy from Russia, and imagine what it would be like then from somebody from the first century. Talk about culture shock. I remember, I have this niece, and she was an only child, so I've just revealed, who it was. But anyway, it didn't matter. I'm not going to say her name. But her mom, she was her mother's only daughter, and and one Christmas, man, her mom just went nuts and bought her and bought her and bought her, more and more and more and stuff. Finally, had this Christmas tree just piled up. So Christmas morning comes, the little girl comes down and open this present, and then now try this one, and now this one. Now, you know what happened eventually? She says, I don't want to open any more presents. I'm tired of this. I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore. And there's still, still half as many again, under the tree. She was tired of opening presents. I like it. What do you mean, Paul? You can get your coat in a few weeks. What's that? Here, we'll UPS it on over if you really want that one. So it would be natural for a New Testament Christian slave to think of heaven as a place of unlimited wealth and comfort and ease. See, and the fact is, we live in a nation that way, which we live in a nation of unimaginable wealth and ease and comfort. We're here already, right? You could say that our wealth is actually managed to compete with heaven. Whoa. You could say our wealth has managed to obscure our vision of the holy city, to dull or maybe blunt our desire to leave this life of ease and comfort and wealth, to take up another life of ease and comfort and wealth. Not much change if you look at it that way. But there's a but. There's a but. Now, I know that God's the source of all wealth, okay? And all the gold is mine, all the cattle is mine. But you ever thought that maybe God might be giving the same object lesson to us as he did for the Israelites in the desert, except this object lesson is written much larger. This is in Numbers 11. Let me regale you with the tale of the quail. Okay, everybody remembers the quail, right? So the Israelites, they're getting manna every day. You go out early in the morning before the sun comes up, gather it all up as much as you need for your family, and come back, and you can, the stuff is like, the way to describe it, it sounds like honey bunches of oats to me. Breakfast cereal. It's sugary. It's got, it says it's sweet, and you can crush it, you can boil it, you can fry it, you can fricassee it, you can turn it into to tortilla shells for all I know. You know what I mean? This stuff is, you do anything you want with it. You eat it raw, I guess. And so anyway, but it's there every morning. And that was the problem, every morning, until finally the Israelites are going, bleh. I'm so tired of manna. And so they don't ask God for a variation in the diet. They just gripe. We hate this stuff. That's where they came to. And even Moses started griping. He was griping at God. Lord, it's all your fault for making me the leader of this stiff-necked, rebellious people. Why don't you just go ahead and kill me right now? What is that? And so God says, I'll get him some meat. And Moses says, going to need quite a bit of meat. There's about 3 million people here. If you start with 650,000 fighting men, which was the size of their army, and you talk about wives and kids to go along and grandparents, then you've got close to 3 million people. 3 million people out there. Going to need quite a bit of meat. And so and that's what Moses says to God. So God says, you think I'm weak? You think I can't do it? Did you forget about the Red Sea already? I managed to bring manna every day. So do you think I can't do meat? I can do meat. In fact, not only am I going to get meat for this people, I'm going to give them so much meat that it's going to come right out their noses. That's in Numbers 11:20. And so he did. Now, I don't know how much a day's walk is. You know, I can cover 20 miles in a day, but, you know, we have good roads. Maybe it's less than. But, you know, somewhere between 10 and 20 miles would be a day's journey. That's what God said, you know. So assuming that. See, so what God did was he caused this wind to blow. And he blows quail in from the sea. And it covers the ground. There's so much quail that it just covers the ground around the camp of Israel for 10 or 20 miles in every direction. Not only did it cover that much ground, but it was 3 feet thick. There's 2 cubits, 3 feet thick. Maybe 30 inches, depending on your cubit. This is enough, 2.5 to 3. And so, you see, now, that's in Numbers 11:31. God did it for 30 days. I'm going to do this for 30 days for you guys. Now, if those quail didn't evaporate by daylight the next morning, that was a mess. That was a mess. Now, there is an excess of wealth. You want meat? You got meat. All right? See, my granddaughter's room, their bedrooms, they're so cluttered that it's hard to even navigate in them. You know, stuff comes off the shelf. You know how they are, clothes and toys and figurines and this and that and the other, whatever, books and so on and so forth. You know, and boy, it gets, you know, it doesn't matter. You can tell them to clean it up, and an hour later it looks the same again. And you have to get around and try not to trip, you know, because they have, you know, and my niece, she opened presents till the presents came out her nose, so to speak. See what I mean? See, and if being rich, see, it brings up a question then. We have a question now. And this is what everything's leading up to. If being rich is all that it's cracked up to be, why are children killing themselves? You know, why are our fellow citizens in this great wealthy nation fleeing reality with heroin or cocaine, or, you know, there's a constellation of drugs out there that you can buy on the street. You know, is reality not good enough? Need more quail? You know, I don't think that's the answer. You know, if the wealth that we have in this life doesn't, and apparently it never can satisfy, then why would anyone in this nation find streets of gold and gates of pearl so attractive? Got all that here, more or less. Why leave this nation of so much wealth that it already comes out our noses for a nation of even more wealth? See, you know, what's that? What's going on here? You know, see, we have everything. Even our poor people, they can scrape up enough money. Those people on the floor that sleep on the floor, they can get enough money somehow, some way, panhandling, whatever they do, to buy drugs to get rid of the reality, you know. But why leave this life if it's so good, even by drugs? You know, it's another form of suicide. You know, the question really is why. Look, if being able to fly halfway around the world in less than a day, if having access to medical procedures that would qualify as miraculous in the first century, if having a whole closet full of clothes made from cloth of a more fine weave than even kings wore in the time of Christ, if having access to funds to buy goods from anywhere in the world with a swipe of a piece of plastic, if having access to the world's knowledge at our fingertips, if all this is not sufficient to make us happy, not sufficient to keep us from killing ourselves, deserting reality one way or another, then why would anyone believe the holy city itself, with all the wealth of God Almighty, why would anybody believe that would be enough? You know? See, God provided this great object lesson in this country. With due respect to President-elect Trump, God's shown that the problem is not lack of wealth, and the solution isn't more wealth. Can't be. We already have more wealth than anybody could imagine. So the answer to this lies in a very often overlooked and underapplied passage, a couple of passages, 1 John 3 and 2, Romans 8:29, where John says, Beloved, now we are the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. But one thing we're going to know is when he does appear, we shall be like him. We're going to see him as he is. See? And Paul, he makes a similar observation to the church in Rome. He says, For whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his son. I'm going to hammer on that for just a bit. Now, it makes sense. First century Christian, he was a slave, didn't even own a pair of sandals maybe. He would think that a city of fabulous wealth like New Jerusalem, as described by the scriptures, would be a solution to all his problems. Basic problems like hunger, poor nutrition, stuff like that, you know. It's not really the case, is it? We've got an object lesson. We're living in it. It's not the case. The problem is, or the reality that's hard for so many Christians to face, and it's impossible for the world to face, is that the problem is we are who we are. That's the problem. Right? See, even as regenerated people inhabited by the Holy Spirit, see, with the understanding the mysteries of the kingdom of Christ, like Paul said, it's generally true, not always, that we're rarely filled with or experience in any lasting way the sheer joy of knowing God. It's just something we don't experience much. So we can experience a deep sense of relief. I'm very relieved that my sins are forgiven. Whew, you know, I experience that all the time. That's easy. I experience thankfulness at the mercy of God. See, but a continuing, abiding joy is simply not in the cards for us. You know, we just don't have that. You know, and it's not for us. And if it's not in the cards for us, you can bet your bottom dollar it's not in the cards for the people of the world either. Okay. Now, I'm not saying we're never happy. I'm just talking about this constant experience, a constant experience of joy, of knowing God. See, not only do we not experience the joy of the Lord, see, we can't even do anything about it. Like, you can try. You know, all you have to do is clench your fist really hard, and you grit your teeth, and then you just sweat out a few drops of joy. Does anybody want to try that? Give it your best shot. Not going to work. We know that. We can't do anything about it because of who we are. See, the root of the lack of joy lies in our nature as fallen human beings. See, and our nature is ours. It belongs to us. You know, no one changes their own nature. See, and that's the reason that walking the streets of the clearest gold and entering through gates of solid pearls in our present condition, in our present nature, all of that wouldn't do us any good at all. We might as well just stay home, see, where we are. See, and that brings us to this promise of God that, and this is my own opinion, this is the promise that is generally not considered very much by Christians, and yet it's a promise that actually gives that city of God its worth to us. Okay? We shall be like him. That's the key. We'll see him as he is. That's the promise. See? So God's promise, we're not going to be as we are. We're not going to be the people we are right now, you know, more or less joyless. We're going to be just like Jesus, who is God, see? And see, all that's going to be left behind. All this that we are right here, right now, that's gone. That's the promise. It's going to be taken away. See, the thing of it is that change, though, is in the future. You know, we only see it by faith. You know, God's just promised, this is what's going to happen to you. You know, you're going to lay down this life, and you can take up the new life. You know, you will be different. I'll make you different. You're going to be like Jesus. See, it's a future tense. That's why John said, you know, we're going to be like him. We will be. See, that's future, not now. So we have the down payment on that promise. We have that right now. The Holy Spirit's with us right now. See, we have the down, you know, but we still retain the old man of sin. He's still with us. And the ability to experience a constant state of joy, of contentment, a state of love and generosity, that only belongs to the nature of God himself, whose nature we shall inherit. Not like we are, like he is. And so only those who are made into the image of God can really enjoy the New Jerusalem. Wouldn't do us any good to go there like this, but we won't go like there. Go there like this either. See, for the old man of sin, see, all that wealth and beauty of that city, it'd just be rust and ashes in his mouth. Wouldn't mean anything. This promise of the new being, see, is given to anybody. Anyone who believes, whosoever. See, and it doesn't matter about weakness of character. See, a guy on the street has a weak character. Doesn't matter. He's still subject to the invitation. It doesn't matter about physical ability or intelligence. My nephew Billy was a, what do you call that? A mongoloid. There's another word for it. Pardon? Down syndrome. Yeah. He was baptized. He was subject to the call. Would you like to go to heaven and believe? Do you believe in Jesus? Yeah. Okay, we're going to do the job for you. See, it doesn't matter. Intelligence, none of these things matter. See, we leave every single one of these things behind when we leave this earth. See, and the promise being to whosoever will, anybody at all. That brings me to this last point, and then we're going to hang it up. See, it was okay back in the first century to point a poor slave toward a city of fabulous wealth. That would provide tremendous hope for him, for the future, for that slave. But in this age, we have that already. There's something else that we need to talk about. See, what we don't tend to look at and don't tend to offer is that no one who believes in Jesus is going to be the same man that he is now. That's the biggie. That's the real key to everything. See, I think that's a concept that some of us are going to find useful in talking to people who are really down. Now look, it's a different approach, and I'm going to emphasize something here. It's going to sound awful, but it's not. It's true. This thing's being recorded, and I guess maybe somebody out there is going to be, might actually tune in and listen to it someday. It might be that, not everyone here are Christian. I mean, everyone here are Christians. See, and you guys all know about what I'm talking about. See, but there's somebody that may have never been to church that's going to hear this accidentally, somehow. Never thought about Christ in his life. See, well, God has an offer for you. See, if anybody's thinking about leaving this life, like giving up your life, doing drugs while you're waiting to die, or actually thinking about doing away with yourself, it's something that only Christ can offer. Okay? If you're going to give up on yourself anyway, then why not let God do the job for you? Okay? Why not let God make you into a totally different person than you are now? A new creation, see? Someone so different from who you are now that joy and thanksgiving worship, this is going to be part of your nature. In fact, what it is, what's true is that when anybody believes in Christ, he's already given up on the old man. We just don't talk about it much. We don't think about it much. But it's time to think about it, and it's time to offer it. See, becoming a Christian will destroy completely the person you are now. We don't generally use those terms, but it's true nevertheless. And, the Bible calls it crucifying the old man. In modern parlance, we could call it suicide by Christ. God is able to destroy the old man, the person that we are, that you are now, in a way far more effective than an overdose of sleeping pills or eating a bullet. But it takes a while. Forgiveness of sins, the first step. And we can't forgive our own sins. Nobody can. We can't change who we are, but God can, and he will. See, that's the key promise of the Bible. You're going to inherit the very nature of God. You won't be the person you are today. That person is going to die. And for that person, see, who's given up on life, on his or her own life, who thinks that they hate themselves, God has an offer for them to consider, for you to consider. There's more than one way to die. More than one way to kill yourself. If you will trust Jesus, God will utterly, completely, for all time, destroy the person that you are now. He can do it far more effectively than any method you have at your disposal. And out of the ashes of that destruction, he will raise a new creation. That's what's going to happen. A new creation of everlasting joy, everlasting beauty. See, before you pop the next pill, before you pull the trigger, this is an offer to think about. If you really want to die, why don't you let God arrange your funeral for you? You have nothing to lose, not even yourself. See, and so now it's time for the invitation. Doesn't matter who, rich, poor, slave, free, kings, mighty men, whatever. Doesn't make any difference. Everybody's invited. We're toast anyway. Every one of us is going to lose this body. None of us are going to survive this life. It's over. Life is terminal. It's the nature of things. See, but there's an invitation. And the invitation then is to a God, to the God, who will utterly destroy who you are now, and he will surely resurrect you to who he is. That's the key. You can give up everything, and you can gain everything. That has always been the offer from Christ. You give up this life, and you gain eternal life. Give up this person, and that person and the new person is raised. That's the invitation. Okay, Dean?